Hello and welcome to this video on Myriad, which is an oscillator, or you can consider it a full voice, with a fantastic feature set from Emute Lab Instruments. Here's what's to come in the video. This video is sponsored by Emute Lab Instruments. So Emute Lab Instruments say that Myriad is a stereo Eurorack multi-oscillator with flexible modulation options, powerful internal meta-modulation systems, a novel hybrid analog and digital synthesis design, and I'd agree with all that. They also pose the idea that Myriad is a pataphonic oscillator, stating that if pataphysics is the science of imaginary solutions and exceptions to the norm, then pataphonics explores the contrast between everyday music making and the surreal, abstract, and maybe absurd edges of sound synthesis. I'll stop quoting them here, and you can check out more on their website, which is well worth a read, and that's linked down below. But let's just get into the features. Myriad is 16 HP, and it's designed to create these big complex dynamic sounds by mixing 9 internal oscillators that are in 3 groups of 3 oscillators. These oscillators can then be detuned and intermodulate to create motion and a stereo image. The interface is really quite simple, with a nice set of controls, where you have encoders here to select on this main screen your oscillator models, and these are in 3 groups of 3, and you can see what oscillator model you're in, dialing those in across the 3 parameter sets there. To run down those oscillator models quickly, we have models called saw, chirp, shark teeth, pulse, resonant chirp, triangle, piranha, parasine, formant, metallic, random walk noise, bit noise, and then on that 12th oscillator model, you actually have silence, so you can turn off groups of those oscillators and just isolate those if you like. We'll explore every oscillator model later in the video. You can check the chapter marks down below to skip ahead. And as well as selecting the model, we can control and modulate the shape with this E control, EPS or epsilon. And that applies wave shaping to all of the oscillators at the same time, allowing you to modulate pulse widths, formant shifts, metallic overtones, or whatever oscillator selection or combinations of different selections on those different groups that you have. They all modulate from that same E control or CV input. We have a spread input, which will detune and spread all of those 9 oscillators, and there's an interval control that sets all of the 3 groups of 3 oscillators at the same fundamental octave in the center. Going left of center, that shifts these octaves up and down, and going right of center, that spreads those octaves so the different groups of oscillators are in different octaves there. All of your digital sound synthesis there then hits an analog VCA and driving shaping section. We have clean stereo outputs controlled by the onboard VCA, and then we have shape outputs which you can drive and clip as well as modulate that through the internal VCA. Frequency is controlled by the frequency control, and you also have a volt per octave input as you'd expect for an oscillator, but interestingly for this frequency control, this becomes an attenuverter for that volt per octave input. So much like an FM input on other oscillator designs, you can attenuate your pitch modulation, but up full that will track volt per octave, and going fully counterclockwise, that will negatively track volt per octave. So you can even be creative inverting your pitch control if you like. And there are further pitch controls which we'll get to in a moment. And just to be clear here, as I kind of skirted over how these inputs react, these CV inputs here, volt per octave is attenuverted, as I've just said. We have a VCA, which is normal to a 5 volt signal, so you can just open that fully on that control, but this becomes an attenuator for anything you patch into the VCA input. And then we have spread, epsilon, and interval CV inputs, and those 3 controls all become attenuverters like the pitch control does. There's a really nice simple interface here for the menu where you can push any of these encoders. We can save the state or exit on the X control. The Y control takes us into our internal modulators, and you can select that modulation to be EPS for the epsilon tone shaping, pitch and EPS, or just pitch. You select your modulation type, and then you have a depth and a rate control. And just to run these through really quickly, you have Boyd's, a Lorenz attractor, a Rosler attractor, sines, speedy sines, a neural network, and then drunk walkers. And we'll go through all of these with sound later in the video. Pressing the same encoder takes you out of whatever you've just selected, and pressing the Z control, we then have our finer tuning controls beyond the pitch and the volt per octave for octave, semitone, and fine tune. So that's been a fair bit to walk through feature-wise, but I think with the nice round screen and those 3 push encoders for anything in the kind of menu system, and then all the direct control for everything else, I think it's a simple and quite elegant design to get around. With the onboard stereo VCA, I think it's fair to think of Myriad as a kind of whole voice as opposed to just an oscillator that has to be shaped externally, although we'll also use it just like an oscillator that we then shape with other modules externally too. The timing index is on screen, so skip around the patches as you like, and let's dive in. So in this first patch, we're just exploring these kind of massive multi-oscillator stacks with a couple of layers with the clean outs into a stereo filter and the shaped outs into a low pass gate. I'll play around for a moment and then we'll break it down. So here's the sound from the clean outputs. If we follow these white cables, we have them being visualized on this data module, and then they're coming into this stereo filter and out dry into the mix. The onboard VCA is modulated by this blue trace envelope here, just a steady decay envelope, and there's no modulation going into Myriad. Turning on modulation of spread here, because these become attenuverters once you plug into them. I'm attenuverting that spread to go from its kind of default amount of spread between its oscillators round to a cleaner sound. We could go the other way and take this quarter note envelope to push into more detune. I quite like it cleaning up that detune on that quarter note pulse. And what I have here is a mixture of 3 different oscillator types. I have the saw wave with its variable pulse, a pulse wave with its varying pulse width, and then the chirp oscillator where the epsilon control shifts through different frequencies of these different pulses. So just with this kind of wide open tonally as I move the epsilon control, with this really lovely complex shift between varying the pulse on the saw, on the pulse oscillators, and frequency shifting that chirp. And that spreads really interestingly in stereo with the spread, but also with the interval control. Shifting these different banks of oscillators into different octaves. All of that sound that you're hearing goes into this stereo filter. No resonance, just set as a basic clean low pass. And I have a copy, very typical here, a copy of my VCA envelope that's on Myriad rather than being an end of stream VCA. A copy of that envelope goes to this filter. And that's our basic clean path. I can play around really jammable and performable with detune, filter cutoff, epsilon control. Be playful with the intervals, those octaves between the oscillators. And then muting that layer, I have the driven copy with drive. Let's just crank it up full here. Coming into this low pass gate. And it's really driven, kind of more than I drive it typically. But because I'm kind of going to hide all this grunge in this stereo low pass gate here, or 2 channels of low pass gate, I can strike those 2 sides, creating a kind of driven, clipped, saturated stereo accent that mixes really well with that main clean layer. And then adding in my effects again. Big reverb, it's always good fun. So here I'm having fun with a really quite simple patch, but this is just Myriad we're listening to here as a complete voice with 1 envelope to its VCA and a step signal to its epsilon tone control. I'm using the onboard Boyd's modulation, you can see bouncing around here, but let's remove it. And I have all the oscillators set in model 9 here, which is metallic, and that's an FM engine where the epsilon control introduces more inharmonic metallic sounds. If I remove this modulation, let's set the intervals between the oscillators in the middle, turn off spread, and you can hear we have a nice FM sound right off the bat. Turning up epsilon, it indeed does get more metallic. And it's all super interactive and playable with that spread, the intervals. Let's just add an octave difference there between some of the oscillators. And let's actually slow this right down. I'll make my envelope longer as well to kind of compensate for that slower sequencing tempo. I'll add the Boyd's modulation back in. So pressing modulation, scrolling to Boyd's, it remembers where it was left off. So we've got some tonal shift there happening, but then patching this sequence in. Really nice metallic, but still musical, kind of raspy FM tones in stereo. Intervals an octave apart between the oscillators. We can also spread. We could drive this on those shape outputs. Those metallic tones working well there against that brighter FM. And it's just such a good stereo FM voice. So in this patch, we're exploring and having some fun with sequencing the interval and the spread alongside pitch and envelopes to the VCA. Create this rich sound that sounds like lots of layers going on, like we're sequencing in kind of detune, wider stereo images, sub-octaves and sub-bass and upper octave layers within the pattern. Outside of Myriad, there's just a simple drum pattern playing around. I'll mute that for now, and I'll just strip this back and we'll build the patch back up. So this is the direct stereo output here, all oscillators in the pulse mode, where we have pulse width as our epsilon control, but there's no modulation of that internally or externally. And we started here using a sequence, the green trace and green cable, to modulate interval. Now this is an attenuator, as we've seen already, so with that in the centre it's doing nothing, and as I turn that up, it's a massive sounds as these different layers of sub-octaves and upper octaves come in. But what's nice with the interval control being bipolar, i.e. having a different response to the right as it does to the left, if I attenuate this sequence, it feels more like we're sequencing more standard octave jumps than it does kind of sequencing in layers of sub and upper octaves. And if I add my pitch sequence back in from my sequencer externally, it's a relatively simple sequence with a little bit of transposition happening. But listen how much more lively and interesting it is when we start sequencing that interval as well. Got these really cool kind of like bass hits almost, accenting certain notes in the sequence. Again, without it, simple sound and with, and then we have spread, and I have the blue sequence here for spread, that's on the blue cable, and patching that in. We're also then sequencing changes in that spread between all the oscillators. Then finally I have two envelopes mixed together here. If I just play my main envelope, just adjusting a mixer off screen here, basic decay envelope, and if I reduce the level of that one before it comes in, here's my other envelope. A lower level, faster decay time, randomly playing envelope. So both together, I have my main pattern, there's little kind of flurries in between, playing quietly. So nice dynamic VCA pattern. So as the core of Myriad is these 9 oscillators that you can modulate the pitch and the epsilon shaping of, and you can spread the pitches as well, and you can then drive with analog clipping the output. It's an absolute monster with a big, aggressive, kind of massive doom swarms. And if you've got headphones on, you'll have the same feeling I do at the minute, where it's like your head's just in this chaotic, doom swarm. I kind of can't think of a better term for it. If I back the drive off slightly, I'm on the shaped outputs here, lose the spread, lose the shaping, and I'll remove the modulation. Here's our core oscillator sound. And you can build these kind of spread sounds really easily. You could have just different shapes, even just randomly changing these 3 groups of 3 oscillators. Some lovely shaping between them all. We'll keep the interval where they're all at the same octave for now, and you could just spread them into this big swarm and then really clip that out. Exploring the modulation here, simply pressing to go into it. Let's use a Lorentz attractor. And then we can select whether we modulate the pitch or the epsilon shaping, or both. That's just the shaping. And some of those shapes have more quantized stepping behaviour. That sounds really good here, let's stick with that. But let's slow this down. Let's modulate both the pitch and the epsilon tone control, and add some spread. And I'll go through and just randomly change through some of the oscillator models here, with a bit of drive for good measure. make a drone patch and set some of these ideas in context. So here I've got tons of cosmic debris reverb added to the sound, and I'm just going to fade this in with some external keyboard control. Thought properly sequence these big swarms. I'm in Oscillator Model 1, the clusters, because I really like this aggressive epsilon control. I'm going to have the speedy signs here, modulating that epsilon. And a lot of spread to give these big kind of respaced, super source, swarmy sounds. Fading this out, there's that massive reverb. I'll remove it in a moment, but let's just play a few different notes here, fading them in to this big reverb. Removing that big reverb, there we have our sound. Of course this cleans up with spread down. You can hear those speedy sign modulators just pushing those epsilon controls up differently for each of the oscillators. If I fade this into the reverb without that spread, we'll have much cleaner notes. Push that spreader one more time into these big swarms. So having spent some time with some really aggressive big drones and swarms, I thought we'd just go for a cleaner sound here, and in this case make some nice kind of interval octave spread, which almost starts to feel like a chord sound, kind of dub chord stabs against the beat with some nice effects in the background. Now I'll remove the drums, I'll remove my effects too, and this is my stab from Myriad here. It's in the natural gate, low pass gate. Just because I like the response of this low pass gate, you could, in place of this, use an envelope into that VCA, and you wouldn't even need an external module then. If I open this sound just as is, we have the drunk walkers doing a random walk, both to pitch and epsilon here. And I have some spread too, along with some pitch sequencing. And I'll just back this off with no spread. All the oscillators here are in Model 8, which is a formant that goes from an R to an oo sound. A nice subtle, ah ooh, kind of sound. And with these intervals, it's taking that spread of them all there. And that little bit of that drunk walkers, it's just giving a really kind of wonky chorus-like sound that I can emphasize with a little bit of spread, closing down that sound and then striking my low pass gate, and then adding in my effects. I'll go 50-50 on the dry wet, but it's a very high feedback, highly filtered delay line. Some really nice clean, as I say with the 3 octave spreads there, starts to almost feel chordal. And that set against my drums. So let's take a break from the patches here and go through all the separate oscillator models. And I've set this in the kind of most isolated, almost single oscillator style way as you can. And you do that by setting the oscillator models to oscillator model 12, which is silence. And they are there specifically so you can turn off any group of these three oscillators. So just turning on one of them. There's 3 oscillators per group, as we've said, and it looks like we've 2 oscillators on this right side, these blue cables. It's a bigger kind of stack of signal, so it's a slightly skewed stereo image. The green trace will be a single oscillator in this case, and 2 of the 3 will be on that right side. Model 1 is a saw wave, and it has a variable pulse. And if I spread this, you can see that left side is the single oscillator there because there's no drift or spread, whereas this side, the blue side, we can see the 2 saw waves generated from 2 oscillators being stacked on that right side of the signal. Now going to the next mode here, this is chirp. And chirp is an oscillator that creates sounds from tiny pulses, and the epsilon control there controls the spread and frequency of those pulses. Again with spread. You can see how these 2 oscillators on this side stack up differently. Model 2 is shark teeth, and it's multiple sawtooth ramp waves enveloped by a square wave, and the epsilon controls the teeth in each cycle. So you can see we retain the static level between. The third model is pulse, with pulse width. And again, 2 oscillators stacking on this side. We start to get different stepped waves. Model 4 is a resonant chirp, which is a variation of that chirp model, just with a more resonant tone. The width and frequency of these pulses is what the epsilon controls there. Model 5 is a triangle, and we can skew the peak of this triangle to a kind of soft ramp. It doesn't quite go full saw wave there. Model 6 they call Piranha, and we can see some interesting kinks in this wave, and they say this makes sense when you actually see it, in that it's a triangle wave with a secondary triangle sub-oscillator running at different frequencies, and that creates teeth in these triangles. It adds harmonics there that ride on top of that triangle's natural kind of roll off in the harmonic series. Mode 7 is a parasine. It's a parabolic approximation of a sine wave, and there's some very subtle wave shaping here. You can see as a kind of soft asymmetrical clipping. Mode 8 is Formant, and it's an oscillator with voice-like harmonics, where the epsilon takes you from an R to an U tonality. 9 is called Metallic, and it's FM-style metallic sounds with increased inharmonic partials. Really nice metallic overtones there on the epsilon control. 10 is a random walk noise algorithm. The epsilon changes the type of noise, which they say is a bit like tuning a radio. It's different pops and crackles to whistles. to full frequency noise. And this noise is affected by the pitch control. Mode 11 is bit noise, and it's a variable noise generator. It kind of sounds like whitest noise with occasional pops and crackles, and there's a probability of change there on the epsilon, but the frequency controls larger changes. So do you notice anything kind of strange or unique about this beat? What about if I mute this part of it? Notice how much it cleans up. And if I mute the other part here, I'm using an envelope followed noise to create this kind of crust and grunge that plays so well against these kind of boom bap hip hop beats. Now the beat itself comes into my mult here, and I have a dry copy in the mix. It's a mixture of acoustic and electronic loops, and it works well as it is. If I remove my VCA modulation of Myriad here and open up my filtering, I'm using mode 11 here for some noise. Now we can change how regularly you get some kind of thumps, pops and clicks in that noise stream. But just as a kind of nice way to use noise technique example, here I'm taking this stereo noise, as you're listening to, into a filter. I'll leave that fully open to start with though. I have a copy of my beat, again this one, into a function generator used as a slew limiter, and that's creating this signal here. If I remove the offset, it just plays a long time with that beat. So if I use that signal to control the level of Myriad here, my stereo noise source, we get a nice rhythmic, crunchy, grungy sound that would mix, I'll turn it all the way down here, mix really well against beats. So as I bring up the level here, hopefully you can hear this stereo grunge and fuzziness. It's got this kind of suitably lo-fi, old vinyl sample kind of vibe to it. Now of course with that type of beat, just wide open noise works. Certainly at much lower levels, a fuzzy noise bed works really well. So what I can do here to this envelope is offset it in a utility, which I'll do on this slider here. So let's have a little bit of that bed constantly, but still a clear idea of this rhythm being imparted on the level of noise. I'm actually going to then filter it to kind of sit it in the mix where I'd like. I'm going to go to a bandpass here on this stereo filter and add some resonance. And let's bring that in slowly against the beat. It's definitely louder than I'd sit it in a mix. I'm just trying to make the example clear here. Let's remove the offset that's letting a little bit of noise drawn through from the envelope. It's almost like a kind of high frequency shaker at this point. And it's very simple there, simply showing that you can get noise out of Myriad and VCA its level. But this is a nice technique that I wanted to get across, and how I tend to use noise sources with this kind of lo-fi beat. So let's again take a break from the patches, but this time we'll look at all the modulation that we have on board Myriad. They're all set to the same oscillator model, and we're going to go into modulation, pressing the Y encoder, and we're modulating here. You would select on Y as it says on the screen to modulate pitch, or the epsilon, or both. Let's go with both as it's the most extreme. And the first modulator there is Boyd's. We have our depth and rate controls, rate on this side and depth on this one. And Boyd's is an artificial life algorithm that simulates flocking birds. I appreciate it's a really extreme example, so maybe back the depth off. And the Boyds here follow 3 rules. Coherence, where the Boyds steer towards the other Boyds, or the birds with the birds. Separation, where they'll avoid flying into each other. And alignment, where they'll try and match the speed and direction of the other Boyds. The next modulator is a Lorentz attractor. And this is a dynamic system of kind of chaotic behaviour. And there's lots of references on the manual and the website that you can look at. And it results in this kind of butterfly-like shape, as you can see on the screen. The next one is a Rosler attractor, and it's another 3D chaotic system for chaos dynamics, this time from biochemist Otto Rosler. Sines is a series of 9 sine waves, all running at the same speed with a 40-degree phase difference from each other. If we just modulate epsilon here, we'll have some more stable pitch. We then have speedy sines, which is 9 sine wave oscillators with the phase differences, but also at different speeds, as you can see here. We then have a neural network. And this is a neural network used as a source of complexity, with 5 inputs taking readings from the frequency, spread, epsilon and interval controls. It then changes the speed and depth of some meta modulation. And again, there's lots more references and things to check out on the website for all of these. And then finally we have the drunk walkers. And these walkers, they've had a little bit too much to drink and they can't walk in a straight line. And they kind of stagger around on the screen there, and their distance from the centre determines the modulation of your oscillators. And there's some overlap in similarity in the result of these modulators, but they all have their unique quirks for pushing your tone or pitch around on Myriad. If you've got this far in the video, drop a pataphonic sync down in the comments. What do you think of Myriad? I'd love to know your take on it. Head to patreon.com/DivKid to support what we do, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!